Hello, and welcome to Mindfulness, a new simple definition from Practically Mindful. The goal of this channel is to provide a completely new and more accessible path towards mindfulness meditation. So, if you're just starting off, or if you've tried other forms of mindfulness teaching, welcome. Right, this is for anybody who is interested in the concept. And this particular lesson is designed to provide a very foundational understanding of the concept. Again, a very unique way of looking at the concept of mindfulness and much more transparent. The goal of this is to leave you with no questions about the nature of mindfulness. What are we actually up to here? And by the end of it, you should be able to have a very clear definition and therefore be able to build a more fulfilling and hopefully joyful practice on top of that. So, with that, let's get into what are some common ways that mindfulness is defined or described today? Well, if you've gone out there and you've looked to try and understand and unpack what it is, you may run across imagery like you see on the right there. Very disparate. Somebody's in an office, somebody's out in the universe with their chakras glowing, somebody's alone by themselves in their thoughts. Right? These are all different descriptors that don't really carry a lot of commonality other than being stationary somewhere. We can't really figure out what they're doing. And then the written descriptors aren't much better either. Meditation is not a state of mind. Rather, it is a state of no mind. What does that mean? In what sense is that true? Is that a subjective statement about me and my perceptions? Is that an objective statement about the nature of reality and meditation? I don't know, right? It could be spiritual. We're not sure. Revealing what is already there as a description of mindfulness. Where? Where is there? What plane of experience am I supposed to be understanding that something already is? We're not sure. The problem of meditation is to see reality as it is. Well, I feel like I'm reading this right now and understanding this sentence. So clearly I'm understanding reality to some degree, right? So what am I missing here? If that sounds familiar, these are very common, and you're not alone in this. To feel that way, this is a very difficult thing to describe. In all honesty, or typically it is, and we're going to talk real quick about why that is. What makes mindfulness so difficult to pin down and for people to understand how to define it or what it is? Well, think of it this way: how would you describe the smell of a flower to someone who has no sense of smell whatsoever? You've probably gone through a thought experiment like this in one of our senses, and it is to say, take a sense, and then how do you define or describe that sense to somebody who has no experience of ever having it? We kind of come to an impasse, right? We get to a place where metaphor, analogy, is really the only thing we have left at our disposal. And that is what is at the core of the challenge with mindfulness. Mindfulness is a state of purely sensory experience, which means it's prior to description or comparison. That is really the core of the challenge here. So, what do we do then? How do we go about it? Well, as I see it, there is a single real missing piece from this equation, or from the understanding of mindfulness in general. And that is knowing how to separate or create a distinction between external senses, so sight, sound, touch, taste, smell, right? Those are our external sensory receptors, and learning how to separate those from the internal thoughts that exist on their own or accompany those sensory experiences. What does that mean exactly? What do we mean practically speaking? Again, I'm not going to leave you to languish in that. Well, let's look at a specific example. And if you've seen my other videos, you've probably been familiar with this. I'm very fond of this little diagram. And let's consider this as you and put you in a scenario where you have left your vehicle and you are walking onto a path to go take a hike. And so what's happening in that moment? Well, if we describe it, we could say probably you're walking, so you can feel your feet hitting the concrete and the sound of it. You can hear that. You can feel the breeze across your body and then maybe an itch on your shoulder, as well as seeing the birds and hearing the birds in the trees. And then behind you somewhere, and growing fainter, is the sound of traffic from the road you left. Of course, there's tons of other things that are going on in this moment, but those are some basic ones. And let's dig into one in particular: the traffic. So what exists in the information. Think of it as a packet of information that is traffic. What exists within that experience of traffic? Well, you hear the noise, obviously, but you're also perceiving much more than that. You're perceiving the distance of the traffic behind you. Oh, you don't have to think about it. You just kind of know that it's about 100 feet behind you. And you can hear and understand and interpret how busy it is. You can likely decipher what vehicle types are driving along it, whether it's a large semi-truck or it's small vehicles, and the speed and the location, right? Whether it's over your left shoulder or your right shoulder. So the question is here, in the concept of traffic, all the information here that exists to define traffic in your mind, what of these are external sense received, and which of these are applied or implied by the mind? Well, really, when you get down to it, if you're facing away from the traffic, the only thing that traffic really is in that point is noise. It is just a blanket of noise saturating your consciousness. But the distance, the busyness, the vehicle types, the speed, even the location relative to your body, these are all things that your mind is actually applying to the noise so that you can better understand what is this traffic, right? You're bringing, over time, we build mental models that help us better understand and navigate the world, right? If we didn't apply all these different concepts to the noise of traffic, we'd be like blind squirrels out on the street, and we probably wouldn't survive very long. So every animal is designed to create these additional layers of information and understanding around our sensory received inputs, all the stimuli that come to us through our senses. It's not enough for the brain to go, oh, there's an itch. It has to know that that's an itch on this shoulder, and if I use my right hand, I can scratch it. So the goal of mindfulness then is really to separate these two, and it leads us to a very clear definition. And that is that mindfulness is consciousness in a state of pure sensory reception. You are bringing nothing to the table on top of it. And when we do that, what we realize is that traffic is just a blanket of noise. There's nothing else going on. And even knowing that it is the concept of traffic or vehicles is something you're also bringing to the table. Another way of saying this or asserting this is that mindfulness is external stimuli without internal application. It's perceiving experience without thinking about it. And it's experiencing your senses prior to alteration. In that way, it's much more, we hear that mindfulness or meditation is this lofty next level of consciousness. I disagree entirely. I see it much more as an infantile state to consciousness, where we have peeled back, we have removed the mental models that create complexity and again, depth of information and knowledge about the world. But ultimately, if we think of our mind as having a bandwidth of attention, all those mental models that we're bringing to everything that we perceive, that is just consuming bandwidth. And so what does that mean when we are able to strip those mental models and that thinking side, the internal side, from experience? It leaves so much more room to simply experience our sensory inputs. That is where mindfulness, that is the true crux and the value of mindfulness, is returning to this childlike state of awe around your sensory experience, because you simply have the capacity now to engage with it at a depth that you didn't remember was even possible. That is mindfulness. So with that knowledge, what can we figure out about those previous descriptions that we read at the beginning? If this is a good definition of mindfulness, then it should be able to help us unpack some of this and what was being attempted. Meditation is not a state of mind, rather it is a state of no mind. Okay, let's alter that a bit. Rather, it is a state of no thought. Okay, so when we see no mind, we're thinking, am I totally unconscious in this moment? Am I in a coma, essentially? No, not at all. It means you're receiving all that information, but you're not thinking of it. Mind is synonymous with thought in this statement. Meditation or mindfulness is revealing what is already there. How about it is removing what the mind has applied? So, in that sense, we're not revealing anything. We're already fully aware of what is in front of us, the senses, the feelings that we're receiving. The challenge is that we are doing so much more with it that we are unable to fully appreciate the depth of joy that we can get from just sitting in that state with our sensory experience. So, we're not revealing, we're removing what the mind has applied. And the problem is to see reality as it is. How about the problem is to see reality before alteration? Reality as it is, that is a totally subjective statement. Reality as it is however it is in the moment you're in. So right now we are existing in a very, what is perceived as a dualistic state. You are sitting in the world. But what we do here is we, again, strip back those mental models, and then we're seeing reality prior to our minds attempting to alter it, which creates a totally new experience of reality. That is what we're doing when we talk about mindfulness. So, what's coming next? We'll have additional videos, lessons after this. It's going to get very much into the nuts and bolts of how do we do this. Because essentially, what I'm asserting that you need to be able to do is the equivalent of hearing my voice now without understanding the words that I'm saying. How do you commit your mind to doing that? It's intuitive, it's unconscious, you can't control it, right? Well, there are very specific techniques we can utilize in order to crack those types of automatic connections between the external senses and the internal applications that are tagged along with them at all times. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much, and more to come.